There's one or two key points in this seminar that I have stressed thousands of times. It's vitally important that you follow them properly. On page 26 in your action planner, it's suggested that you make a written description of the person you are about to become. I couldn't stress this enough. I've pointed that there's 2 pages in this book that can literally change your life. This is the first one. Now, what I want to suggest you do, it may seem foolish, it may seem like a fantasy, but I can assure you it works. I want you to stop and think of exactly how you would like to be. The type of person you really want to be. Write it in as much detail as possible on page 26, and write it in the present tense. You may draw on different people that you admire and respect as role models that you might want to emulate this part or that part of their personality. But make this in as much detail as possible in the present tense. Begin by writing, "I am so happy that I am," and then describe the person you truly want to become in as much detail as possible. Don't go any further until that part of this exercise book is filled in. Don't spend 5 seconds wondering how you're going to become this person. Just make it very clear the person you want to become. We'll tell you later on how to execute the image. When you have that completed, turn your tape back on, and John Canary is going to introduce you to a concept of how this great power within us takes over and does what we want.
I always like to kind of get into this lesson with a particular idea because you know, we're into something that make a lot of people feel uncomfortable. And just to make sure that we're all in the same chapter here, we're over on page 27 where it states, "Let go and let God." You know, it's a cute little story about Billy and Johnny. They were having a little bit of trouble in town on an ongoing basis. And Mom didn't know quite how to handle this. Dad had been gone for years, and if something went wrong, these kids would hide in the basement because they would get blamed for it whether they were involved in the activity or not. Well, Mom took a run down to the minister there, brought Billy and Johnny with her. And she walked in, she said, "You know, Reverend, I don't know quite what to do. These 2 boys are constantly into trouble, and every time something goes wrong, they get blamed for it, and I don't know quite how to handle it." Well, he said, "Listen, Mom, you just go on home there. I'm going to take care of this situation right now." And the way she went, he said, "Now, Billy, I want you to sit in the hallway here in that chair. And Johnny, I want you in my office." Well, Johnny got in there and he sat him in that chair, and the old Reverend there, he just sat back in that big old oak desk. And he looked down and he said, "Now, Johnny, we're going to start with some questions, and the first one is, where is God?" Well, Johnny just sat up on that chair there, started to vibrate, you know, in a state of confusion, didn't know quite what to do, blood vessels started to dilate. And he's trying to get a word out. He said, "Come on, Johnny, right now, where's God?" Well, he started to spit, stammer, and stutter, whatever the case might be. And he said, "Johnny, this is the last time I'm going to ask you, where's God?" Well, Johnny just up off that chair and beat it down the hallway, put on the brakes, grabbed Billy, said, "Billy, we got to get out of here. God's missing, and they're going to blame that one on us, too." In this marvelous book that everyone has in their kit, when you pick up and you read this chapter, I want you to keep something in mind. That for 8,000 years, all of the great thinkers, they have all disagreed with one another on many, many different things. But you know, there was only one thing that they were in complete and unanimous agreement with. Just one. That there is a power in this universe. And they say that this power, that it animates, it penetrates, and it motivates the entire cosmos. Now, not too long ago in a TV show, Madam O'Hare was being interviewed by Phil Donahue. And Donahue, she's the lady who's the head of the atheist movement. And she denied the existence of any power in this universe. But one night she was being interviewed by Dick Cavett, and Dick Cavett, you see, he didn't get emotionally involved in the idea. He stopped and he started to think, and he was able to reason with her without him losing control. And she said the only good thing about believing in a power is that you get a lot of holidays. And Dick Cavett said to her, you get a holiday every single year, as all atheists do. And she said, when is that? And he said, on April the 1st. Now, if you were to go to the Ark of Apollo at Delphi, you'll see just 2 words inscribed over that ark at Delphi. And those 2 words go like this. It said, know thyself. But what do we really know about us and what this power is that animates, flows through us, flows with us? I mean, that really is what we are all about. This power that Bob referred to so much yesterday as spirit. Now, to properly do this exercise, we're going to have to define or try or attempt to define this power. But you see, if you define something, then you place limits on it. So you see, the way we're going to define it will not limit it. As a matter of fact, it will show that it is unlimited and that it is infinite. In a marvelous book that I brought out here with me this morning called Your Invisible Power, Genevieve Behrend, I think, put it together well in this book when she said, to get good results in our life, we must properly understand our relationship to this great impersonal power. Now think about what she said. If we are going to get, she said, the kind of results that we want, we are going to have to understand our relationship to this here great, all-encompassing, this great impersonal power. Now she said, this power is intelligent. You and I, we are intelligent. But she said it is these 2 intelligences working together that determine the kind of results that we get. Well then, where do we go to find out a little bit more about this power? You see, if you examine it, there's 178 different names to describe it. I mean, we got Baha'i, Vishnu, Krishna, Muhammad, Buddha, and the list goes on and on and on. Rather than talk about the name, why don't we try to define the activity to see how it operates to, with, and through us? Now, you see, if I were in the United States today, and the people that are here from the U.S., you check this out with them. If I were to ask them if they've paid their hydro bill, what kind of response do you think I'm going to get? Brian? They would think they paid their water bill or something. But you see, you know what I mean by hydro bill. But they're not sure what I mean by hydro bill. But isn't it really the very same power? Yes, no? It's the very same power. Well, you see, this power that we're talking about, rather than try to define its name, let's see if we can define the activity. Now, if you're going to find out what it is, you're going to have to go to 2 sources of reference, the only 2 that are available. And one is science, and the other is theology. They are the only 2 sources of reference we can go to if we're going to try to find out anything. Now, you'll find this in the chapter on Let Go and Let God in that book, and I'd suggest that you read it and reread it until you not only gain an intellectual comprehension, but until you can gain what is called an inner, spiritual, emotional intelligence. You see, the individual that works only with intellectual intelligence, they're really not going to accomplish a whole lot. But the individual that can work with that inner, emotional, or spiritual intelligence, that individual open themselves up to unlimited possibilities. So if we're going to define this power, and we were to go to the scientists and say, what is this power that animates, penetrates, and motivates the cosmos? Why can I walk and talk? What keeps that wall standing? What about night and day? Why is there such order in these cosmos? How do I know where there's a certain star going to be 1,000 years from now and time it within a fraction of a second? Well, the scientist will tell you there is a power that animates the cosmos, and the scientist will say he will call, or she will call that power energy. That's the name they use to describe this activity. Now, if you ask, well, what is energy? This is the only thing the scientist can tell you. And remember, the word science means to know. It means organized knowledge. Well, then ask, what is energy? And this is the only thing science can tell you. That energy just is. It is neither created nor destroyed. It is the cause and effect of itself. And it is 100% evenly present in all places at all times. Doesn't that mean right in here, Shirley? Doesn't that mean right in here, Leslie? All places at all times. It didn't say 20% in Scarborough, 50% in Tennessee. 100% evenly present in all places at all times, is almighty and is all-powerful. That's fine. You may say, well, I choose not to believe that. Well, you're entitled to believe what you want. But remember this, if you don't believe in something, you're going to fall for anything. So we can cross that one out if you like, but some of you will not. Well, that only leaves you one place left to go. And if you were to go over to theology, and what does theology mean? Well, theology just means one thing, the study of God, at least in this part of the world. In another part, it may be Baha'i, Vishnu, Krishna, Muhammad, Buddha again. It goes on and on and on the list. But if you were to ask the theologian, I just left the scientist, I'm trying to find out, what is this power that animates, penetrates, and motivates the cosmos? Say, I just left down there, and I'm trying to find out a little bit about this power. I mean, you've been told that if you do this, thus, and so, you're going to win, that you have great potential. Have you ever been told that, John? Have you ever been told, honey, if you change your attitude, we get along better? And if you change your attitude, you could use your potential and you could be more effective? You ever been told that, Jim? On a daily basis? Sure you have. But you see, the scientist, I went to this scientist and they told me something about this energy. Now you go over to the other side and you ask the theologian. And the theologian will say, yes, there is a power in this universe that keeps everything in working order. But we have a name for the power in this part of the world. What do they call? What is the name they use in this part of the world? So you see, we take that symbol and we put it on the board, and then we ask the theologian, well, tell me, what is, who is, what do you mean by God? Can you give me a definition? And this is the only thing the theologian can tell you. Because remember, you cannot limit it. And the theologian will say, there is a power in these cosmos that we call God, and God just is. Neither created nor destroyed. He is the cause and effect of himself. And he is 100% evenly present in all places at all times. Now it seems to me that I heard that just a few minutes ago. So the only thing that has changed is the name. The activity is the same. And it is clearly demonstrated in the book. You'll find in this book something Werner von Braun stated. Bob quoted Werner von Braun. Von Braun pointed out that science are studying, you could say, the energy and the force around humanity. Theology are studying the force within humanity. And they're eventually going to find out that they are studying one and the same force. You see, when we understand what B. Rand said, it is intelligent, we are intelligent, but it is the working relationship with this power that brings about the kind of results we get, because it can't do for you what it can only do through you. Gosh, I'd give just about anything for a person to get a hold of that or to understand that. That it cannot do for you what it can only do through you. Think about that. Now, would you go over to page 27? We got to move on here. And at the very top of the page, for centuries, there has been a select group of people who are the real thinkers. I mean, we could name many. Edison, Emerson, Thoreau. I mean, there are so many, we could be here all day talking about them. But every one of them, although they had different ideas and different philosophies, this is the one thing they were in complete and unanimous agreement with. These individuals have always known there is a power which permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the cosmos, and that everything you see around you is an expression of that power, and so is everything which you feel. The power operates in a very precise manner, which is generally called law. We choose to call it God. Others may speak of it as love, divine mind, divine intelligence, Jehovah, Lord, Father, first cause, as well as a whole host of other synonymous names. But it doesn't really matter what you call it, because the important thing to bear in mind, and anyone of understanding will really admit the fact, is that it is the power that doeth the work. It's not you and I, it's something we work with, but it also works with us. In other words, everything comes from one source, and that source power always flows and works to and through you. And that is you. Stated differently, the image that you have formed can only come to you on the physical plane of your life. In other words, your results. In one way, and that is by law and through faith. Now, the second part of this particular chapter, Bob is going to work with to show just how faith moves this power into action. Keep these two things in mind as we go through it. There are only two words you need to remember as Bob walks you through this. One is order, and the other is movement. Order and movement. And when both of those are functioning together rather than working against one another, we have success. Happiness, health, and wealth, which is your birthright. So let's bring on, to take us through the rest of this particular chapter, my good friend and your good friend, Bob Proctor.
Sylvia Vanderhook with our company, she's a vice president with our company, gave me a bumper sticker here a couple of weeks ago. And it said, "It's too bad ignorance isn't painful." And you know, that's so true. In covering this particular subject, you're hitting on probably one of the most important things that anyone can study, and yet very few people study it in any depth with respect to application in the various areas of their life. John was quoting Werner von Braun, the late Dr. von Braun. He said one time, now keep in mind this was a scientist, he is considered by many as the father of the space program, and he said after years of studying the spectacular mysteries of the cosmos, he was led into a firm belief in the existence of God. And he pointed out that science and religion were not antagonistic. He said, on the contrary, they are sisters. Well, one studies the forces of nature outside of us, the other studies the force within us. John made reference to that. He was talking about the atheist. I heard a cute little story one time where the guy said he always felt sorry for the atheist. He said when they die, they said they're all dressed up and they got nowhere to go. And now, I have seen in my own life and a number of other people's lives some spectacular things take place when a person grasps this idea. Yesterday, I pointed out that one of our great problems was that we thought we were physical beings. And of course we're not. If we were just physical, then there would be a limit to what we could do. There's a limit to what that table can hold. You start piling weight on that table, and you're going to get to a point where the table's just going to crush under the weight. It's like the story of the camel and the straw. You put too much straw on the camel's back, and you get to a point you just put one straw on too many, and that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. We are spiritual beings living in physical bodies. Now, you and I have an intellect And through the proper use of the intellect, we can do wonderful things in our life. Now, we used a drawing yesterday in the previous lesson, and I'd like to suggest that you come back and focus your attention on this drawing again. Now, remember, we were talking about the mind. We have no difficulty getting an image of a person's body. We see our own every day. We see it reflecting back from the mirror. Every time we look at someone else, we see their body. Well, the problem we have is that we have no image for the mind. Well, of course, in the previous lesson, we gave you one. And we said, let this represent the mind. And then we pointed out to let this represent the body. And we took and we divided this, and we said this actually is the creative or the start of all creation in our life, this part of our personality. Because as this power flows into us, we can do whatever we choose with it. And of course, we can build a negative concept, or we can build a positive concept. But we have the choice of what we're going to build. Now, ask yourself, if you could have anything you want, and it starts in the form of an image, what would you start imaging? Because that's really the name of the game. It's name it and claim it. Now, this works both on a negative as well as a positive basis. Because as you take this image, you can accept it, you can reject it. As the images come into our mind, we can do anything we want with them. We do not have to get emotionally involved with them. Now, this part is the spiritual side of our personality. This side of us has no ability to reject an idea. It just accepts whatever comes into it and instantly and automatically moves the body into that vibration. In other words, the image begins to move into form. Now, as we go on in the upcoming lessons, we're going to talk about more how that happens through vibration and through attraction. I want to share something with you, a couple of stories, and then one personal experience. I was in Jackson, Mississippi back in 1977. I had gone into Jackson to do a seminar, and as I was waiting for my bags to come down the chute, this gentleman came over and he shook hands with me and introduced himself. He told me his name was M.C. Duncan and he was from Oklahoma City. He was the president of Oklahoma Life. And he said, you know, I've been listening to you all week and I've been watching you all week. And I said, well, that's interesting. Where was I? And he just laughed, and he had been listening to cassettes and watching the videos. And as fate would have it, we were there for different reasons, but we were both going to the same hotel. So we shared a cab, we went over to the hotel, we checked in at the registration desk, and then we just wandered over in the foyer and sat down and started chatting. Now, you're going to find that everyone that starts to study themselves, they become great readers. They always want to get into good books because they want to find out more about the subject. It's so fascinating. Well, he and I got talking about the various books that we liked. And we had read many of the same books. And I asked him, I said, have you ever read any of Robert Russell's books? And he said, no, he hadn't. Well, I had an entire set of them. I think there were 8 of them. I had them in my briefcase. Now, I had been reading these books, and I'd give them away here and there. And I just picked up a new set prior to leaving town, and I put them in my briefcase. So I took them out, and I gave them to him. And he looked at me a little strange, and he said, well, let me pay you for them. And I said, no. I said, don't pay me for them. I said, you just take them and enjoy them. And, you know, I just smiled, and I said, you know that you can never give anything away. It always comes back. In fact, pressed down and running over. I said, that's the rules. And he laughed, and he said, yes, I know. Well, when I got back to Chicago, to my office, I began to get inundated with great material from M.C. Duncan. And the first thing he sent me was this transcript of a minister's sermon that was preached on November the 21st, 1976. Now, I received this on the 3rd of March, 1977, so the sermon was only a couple of months old. It was delivered by a Reverend Norman Neves at the Church of the Servant in Oklahoma City. And M.C. Duncan wrote here, insist upon miracles today. Here he wrote, Bob, first 4 paragraphs, great story about wrong thinking, etc., etc. Best regards, M.C. Duncan. Now, this is a classic. It really is. Keep in mind, this is how a minister is starting a sermon in Oklahoma City. He began by saying, I read a story in the paper the other day that not only caught my attention, but that continued to hold it and hold it the further I read. It was a story of a railway employee somewhere in Kansas who accidentally locked himself into a refrigerator car and then who wasn't able to escape. Perhaps you read the story also and know what I mean when I say it continued to hold my attention. Now, he said apparently this man had banged and banged on the side of the car to attract someone's attention, but apparently also no one heard him. So he finally gave up and resigned himself to his fate. Sometime during the night, as he felt his body becoming numb, he began to scribble some sentences on the wall of the car. Sentences recording some of his last sensations as he moved closer and closer to death. The first sentence said, I'm becoming colder. The second sentence, a little bit further down, said, still colder. Nothing to do but wait. Then it said, I'm slowly freezing to death. Half asleep now, I can hardly write. And then down at the bottom, this sentence which said, these may be my last words, which in fact they were. When the railroad car was opened the following day, they found him dead. But let me tell you something that's really startling about this story. The freezing apparatus on the car had been malfunctioning. It had not been operating properly for several days. And believe it or not, the temperature hadn't gotten below 49 degrees during the entire night that he was there. In other words, this man had become the victim of his own illusion. He had presumed that his time had come and his life was over, when in fact there was no need of that presumption at all. And so, even though the temperature had never fallen below 49 degrees, this man died nevertheless and isn't here to enjoy himself today. Neves went on to point out, he said, there's a lot of us that do that with our lives, aren't there? We misread the signs of our predicaments. We presume that things are worse than they really are. And so, like that man, we too become the victim of our own illusion. We die, if you will, even though the temperature of our circumstance never even gets close to freezing. Now, you see, this man used his reasoning factor, and he used it incorrectly. He let what he thought were circumstances control his thinking. That's the image he put in, and that's exactly what he got. Do you think maybe that that's what Moses was talking about when he talked about that reasoning factor? When he said, behold, today I lay before you both a blessing and a curse. Now I'm going to give you an example of someone that used it the other way. Many years ago, I made a sales call in Chicago when I first started to do seminars in the United States on a gentleman named Mel Haycraft. Mel Haycraft was the vice president of sales to the Prudential Insurance Company in their Mid-America region. Now, I did not know it at the time, but the Prudential Insurance Company was the #1 company in the world, and the Mid-America region was the #1 region in the Prudential Insurance Company out of 10 different regions. So needless to say, I was talking to a heavyweight when it comes to business. I was only in his office a few minutes, and Mel said, well, Bob, what is it? And I said, Mel, I've got a seminar that'll just get your sales flying. And I'll never forget the smile that had come on his face. And he looked at me, and he pushed his chair back from the desk, and he opened a drawer, and he took a file folder out, and he spun these brochures across the desk. Did you see all those brochures? I said, yeah. He said, all those people said the same thing. I said, is that right? I said, well, we're different. We was me at the time. But if you're alone in business, you never refer to me, you see. So at any rate, I said, we are different. See, I had a brochure made up that made it look like we operated on the entire 12th floor of the Hancock Center, I thought. But at any rate, he looked at me and smiled and he said, how are you different? And I said, we get results. He said, they all said the same thing. Now, I knew that I wasn't making any headway. If you're in sales, you know when you get to a point like that, you either have to dance or hit the exit. And I wasn't about to leave. I had a hard time getting in to see this man. As a matter of fact, an associate of mine had phoned him every Monday for a year. We couldn't get in to see him. One Monday he was sick. Mel phoned him to ask what was wrong. And that's how we broke down his door. But at any rate, I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. You give me 100 of your best people. Don't give me the worst, give me the best. I said, anyone can do something with the worst. Just give me the best. And I said, we will do a seminar, won't cost you a dime. We'll give you the material, give you the seminar, and I said, let them be the judge of whether this will help them in their sales. He said, you got a deal. So we did that seminar. I ran into a chap in Detroit here just a little while ago, Carl Walker, that was in that group of people. I remember Carl sitting in the back row. I'll never forget Carl. And about halfway through the seminar, he kept getting up and down and up and down and up and down. The guy was getting so excited he couldn't stay in the seminar. He had to go out and sell somebody. But at any rate, that's a true story. Carl's over in Detroit, and Carl, you'll be watching this. You'll remember as well as I do. We laugh about it every time I see him. But at any rate, we passed the test. I found myself in front of 450 of their district insurance agents at the Hillside Holiday Inn in Chicago. When I was talking to them for a very short period of time, I suggested that anyone in that room could go out and write $5 million worth of business. Now, when I mentioned that, you could just feel, wham, the minds go closed. I'd lost the entire group. Now, do you see, what we were doing and what was different, we were introducing this element right here to their sales, to the psyche of their salespeople, to their sales presentation, to their belief system. They had never had that mixed in with their training before. This chap come up to me at the first break. He says, Proctor, he said, did you ever sell insurance? And I said, no, I never have. He said, I didn't think so. I said, why are you saying that? He said, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I said, now hold on a second. I didn't say I didn't know what I was talking about. I just said I've never sold insurance. I said, I don't know any more about insurance than the doorman or the salad chef in here. I said, I'm operating on the premise you already know how to write $5 million worth of business. And he looked at me and said, well, wait just a minute. He said, you know this company is 100 years old? And I said, yeah, I'd heard that. He said, you know there's 20,000 agents in this company? And I said, yeah, I'd heard that. Well, he said, did you hear that we've never had one write $5 million worth of business? Well, I said, then you can be the first. Yeah. Now, this was around the end of August. He said, you said this year. I said, that's right. He said, the year's over half gone. I said, then it won't take as long to do it. Now I said, Don, if you can see yourself as a $5 million producer, you heard what Paul Hutsey did with this idea, and you get emotionally involved with that idea, you turn it over, that part of you that's unseen, it's non-physical, but it's in every part of your being, I guarantee you, you'll act differently, and what you attract to you will be quite different. And I said, you'll do it. Now, that's a magazine that that company prints, or printed. That's a picture of the man I was talking to. His name's Don Slovan. And that's a write-up about our conversation. The second week in December, Don Slovan had paid for $5,200,000 worth of business. He closed the year with a little better than $6 million worth of business. And the strange part about this is, when he crossed that imaginary line, there was a whole string of people following him. See, every person, everywhere in history, that got the image of what they wanted. They burned that image into their mind. They refused to accept circumstances. Every one of them have accomplished what they've imaged. For years, people had tried to run a mile in 4 minutes. I mean, thousands of years. Do you know the early Egyptians used to turn a lion loose and let it chase a person hoping they'd run a mile in 4 minutes? But they couldn't do it. The experts said it couldn't be done. They said our cardiovascular system wasn't proper for it. They said our muscles weren't right. The bone structure wasn't right. But in the spring of 1954, a young guy named Roger Bannister quit believing in the experts, started to believe in Roger Bannister, and he ran a mile in under 4 minutes. Within a month, other people were running a 4-minute mile. We had a young guy in this company down in Louisiana. As a matter of fact, he worked for Paul Otzi. That wrote $5 million in a week, and he previously hadn't written 3 in a year. Now, why am I mentioning these things? Well, I mention them because you could all tell a story like this about yourself.
Just reading on commitment here, it's vitally important that you remain committed to your goal. Understand that if you've got a vision, there's no such thing as an unrealistic vision. Roger Bannister did not believe in the experts. Roger Bannister believed in Roger Bannister, and it's precisely why he broke that 4-minute mile. You can do it. Don't listen to the people that tell you you can't. I want to introduce you to a lady that has a phenomenal vision. Susan Busey. Relate to her and the goals she set.
Do you have a dream for your business?
Oh, yes.
What is it?
Without being a cliche, to be a household name, but to be the best service in the world.
Susan Busey said, the very biggest and the best in the world. Susan Busey started a maid service. They're cleaning homes. And she wasn't satisfied just to work in her own neighborhood and earn a few dollars. She wanted to develop this worldwide. I received a call from Susan just within the past week. Susan is opening in the Orient. She has a contractual arrangement with Japanese business firms, and she's going to be opening her business in the Orient. Susan Busey, like Roger Bannister, did not let people telling them they couldn't do it stop them. Don't let anything stop you. You stay committed to your goal. Keep that dream in your mind, and understand the power within you will execute it if you just hold it there and give it everything you've got.
It was his stick person concept, letting go of the past, which I was quite prepared to do, and I'd never heard anybody say to me, let go of the past in such a way that I did. Take a look at the future with optimism and fight. If you want something bad enough, go for it and get it, and I did.
How many people here have played a yo-yo? Come on. How many have played a yo-yo? Let me see it. Have you ever played a yo-yo? Sure you have. Well, I was wandering down the street in Columbia, South Carolina. Must be 15 years ago. I was working out of Los Angeles. And at noon this day, I didn't feel like eating. I was going a little stir-crazy in the hotel. So I decided to just go for a walk. I was with another chap named Michael Sobel, who was a lawyer of ours out of L.A. And we're wandering down the street. It's a beautiful day. And I saw this little kid playing a yo-yo. Now, do you know it's marvelous the way our mind works? We can relive years in our life in seconds, just like that, a millisecond. Well, when I saw this little guy, I had a great movie just whoom right across the screen of my mind. And I saw myself as a little kid coming running out of Balmy Beach Public School in the East End of Toronto. And I would run up Beach Avenue and down Kingston Road, and I was looking for a specific guy. His name was Ricky McGinnis. And Ricky McGinnis was employed by the Cheerio Yo-Yo Company here in Canada. He was a yo-yo pro. He was a champion. And I'm going to tell you, this guy could play a yo-yo. Now, they dressed these guys up. You see, they gave them a uniform. The uniform consisted of a maroon sleeveless sweater that had red, white, and blue here and a V-neck. That was for V for victory. That came from the Second World War. Some of you weren't around then. In fact, most of you weren't around then. But anyway, that's what that represented. But he had a great big crest here in the center. And it had Cheerio across it, and it had Yo-Yo Champion. Then it had little badges sewn all over it, and each one of these little badges represented a trick. And if you learned the trick, you'd get these little badges. Well, of course, he had them all. And I always remember I envied this guy because he had a great big raft of yo-yo strings around his neck. Now, yo-yo strings when I was a young guy were 2 for a nickel. And of course, if you had 2 nickels at the same time in our neighborhood, you were considered financially independent. I mean, now, it was a poor neighborhood. None of us slept alone in that area until after we got married. I mean, you just fat ones on the bottom, you know. I mean, that was a rough area. Well, at any rate, every now and then we'd break a string, and we didn't have a nickel to buy a new string, and he would take one of these strings out and he'd hand it to us. He might even pat us on the head and call us by name. Well, of course, we had arrived if the pro recognized us. Because, you see, he was like the Pied Piper. When we found him walking up the street, we'd walk with him and we'd just stare at him, you know, and just look at him. I mean, we had this guy. You talk about God. We thought this guy was God. I mean, we had him deified. Well, at any rate, he would get to Kingston Road and Scarborough Road, and he'd start teaching us a trick, and he'd test us on a trick, and we'd form a great big circle around him. Now, that's what I saw in a matter of a millisecond when I saw this kid play the yo-yo. And I suddenly had the strongest urge inside of me to play a yo-yo. I didn't have a yo-yo. So I called this little kid over. I said, come here. He was all by himself, just a little kid. You know, so he come over and I said, give me your yo-yo. So he took his yo-yo off and he gave it to me. Now, he was still at a pump your body stage. You see, he didn't know how to play the yo-yo. He was like Carol. He was just learning. But at any rate, he'd be walking along and he'd pump his body, and I guess if he kept doing that, he figured it would go up and down. So at any rate, the little kid gave me the yo-yo, and I thought, I wonder if I could still play one of these things. I hadn't had one in my hand for years. It's not bad. You can give me a hand for that if you want. Well, then I started to remember some of the tricks. That's called making it sleep. If you can't do that, you are out of luck. You can't play the yo-yo. You can't do the tricks. So did that. Then I remembered this one. This was rock the cradle. You learn how to do that, and you get a badge, you see. Isn't that wonderful?
What trick is that, Bob?
What trick is that? That's a dandy. You know, Gina asked me just a few minutes ago, John, there's a yo-yo in that bag. Do you want to throw it out? Gina asked me a few minutes ago, how's the string in your yo-yo? And I said, oh, it's fine. Now, that's the second time in a week. That's the second time in a week that that's happened. I got to get this one working right. It wasn't working right earlier. Well, yeah, John used to carry the yo-yos and clean the boards, you see. Ah, we got it gone. We're right back in business. Remember that song, John? It's just like old times. He was only a baby. He was a bad baby, too. Now, you don't believe me, ask his mother. She's sitting up there. Well, at any rate, I was in the Boy Scouts. You see, I came prepared. I have 2 yo-yos. I think I have 2. Yeah. That was rock the cradle. Learn how to do that, and you get a badge. Now, we had another one. Well, this is a dilly. And this one called shoot the gun. Now, seeing as how a pro's at his best regardless, I'm going to make this sucker work. But at any rate, one day he came around and he said, listen, we're going to have a big contest, and he said the winner is going to get one of these sweaters. Well, I'm going to tell you, you talk about building an image in your mind. All of a sudden, I could see on the screen of my mind that sweater on me. And you talk about getting emotionally involved. What did we say feeling was? We said feeling is conscious awareness of vibration. What did we say cause vibration? We said getting emotionally involved in the idea, put the body into the vibration that it had to be in, and when you become consciously aware of that, you called it a feeling. Well, I could actually feel this sweater on me. I mean, I could hear all the pretty little girls saying, that's the guy that won the sweater. And of course, I'd let on I didn't hear him, and I'd say, that's right, you know, it was me. And anyway, I could actually feel this. I mean, I had to have that sweater. Do you know, every once in a while, something comes up, and you just have to do it. I had to win that sweater. Now, I was just a little kid. I was learning a phenomenal life's lesson, but I didn't know I was learning it. Now, Rick would come around, and he'd just show us this trick once. He'd fire this thing down, and he'd bring it up. I may have to get another string for this thing. Get up here. You got to do that now. Yeah, that's it. All right. Now, how many of you can do that with the yo-yo? Now ask yourself why you're not able to do that, and I am. Do you want to know why? I'm going to tell you why. See, any person in this room could learn how to do that. If you wanted the sweater bad enough, and I wanted that sweater, and I hooked the sweater up, what I wanted, with what I was doing, and I had to believe I could get it. What did Napoleon Hill say? He says there's a difference between wishing for something and believing you can receive it. And he said the key is you've got to believe it. William James says believe, and your belief will create the fact. Well, you know, that's where it all starts. That's where it all starts. I don't care how simple it is. I don't care if it's just winning a sweater with a yo-yo. It could be writing the 5 million, or it could be doing what that man did in the boxcar. It works both ways. It has no ability to change the idea. Whatever you ask for, that's exactly what you get. Now, as you take the idea that you build, and you've got the ability to sit down and design any idea you want. You see, if you are going to decorate your room, you'd get an idea here in your mind of how you'd like that room decorated. And then you'd go and get the things that you needed, and you'd put them in place until you had built on the physical plane of life a replica of the picture you've got in here. We have a gentleman here with us today that wrote the music and the lyrics for The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. Give Scott Turek a hand. Sitting right over here on the side. Stand up for a minute, Scott. Scott is the musical director over at Leopold's Theater. When you heard Dave ask, is there anybody from out of town, and you heard someone say from Colorado, Scott is from Colorado, but he is entertaining over at Leopold's Theater. If you want to see a good play, you want to go over. I've been to Scott's play in the past, and I'm going to tell you this man is quite a musician. Scott, where does the music start? Would you say it starts right in here? You start hearing it in your head, don't you? Yeah. That's right. You actually hear the music in your head. You see, Scott takes this power and he turns it into music in his head. He literally hears it. And as he hears it, he sees it written on paper. Am I right or wrong? Then you take a pen or a paper and you write it. Scott, stand up for just a second, because this is a good example. Then when he's got the music, he not only writes the music, he put words with the music. Is that correct? And we call those lyrics. And he takes and he writes the lyrics, and he knows those words. What are words? Words are nothing but ideas dressed up for our physical benefit. And you put words, and that puts more meaning then to the sound that you've heard. Is that correct? Thank you, Scott. Now, you see, some people will say, well, he's creative, but I'm not. That's not true. Everyone's creative. We're all an expression of the same power. We've all been given the same tools. Scott has developed those, and many of us haven't. This is where it starts. Now, you're working with a universal power. This power just isn't in you. It's in everyone. It's in everything. We use this drawing to graphically convey an idea of you, your body, your mind, your intellect. But if you were to look at this properly, this is how it would appear. It's a universal power that you're impressing that idea on. Do you know when you throw a pebble into the lake, the entire shoreline has been changed? If you throw a pebble into the Atlantic Ocean, the entire shoreline has been altered. You'll say, oh, not the Atlantic. Yeah, even the Atlantic Ocean. Do you know where our problem is? We could not see with these physical things the change in the shoreline. But understanding lets us see the change in the shoreline. Van Gogh was asked how he did such beautiful work. He did it the same way Scott does it. I dream my painting, and then I paint my dream. Do you know you'll never buy an original painting? Why? The original's on the mind of the artist. Well, we're all working with the same power. Don Slovan sensed that I believed he could write the 5 million. I knew he could write the 5 million. That gave Don a little inspiration, and he started to think about it. He started to think of all the good things that would come to him, fame, fortune, everything. And he got emotionally involved, and as he put that idea in there, Don Slovan moved into a brand new vibration. He started to attract all kinds of different things to him. Do you think it's an accident when one person, one in sales, goes into their office and in their pigeonhole there are no messages, and another one goes in and there's 14 people wanting to buy something from them? Do you think it's an accident when there are two businesses side by side, one wins, one loses? I go to a barber shop down on Bayview Avenue, Tony's. I've been going there for 25 years, whenever I've lived in Toronto. 4 doors away is another barber shop on Bayview Avenue. I have never seen anyone in that barber shop in 25 years. I've never seen one person. Now, I know someone goes in there. I know that because the person couldn't keep the doors open otherwise. Tony's, you always have to wait. And the other one, you would never have to wait. And someone would say, well, that'd probably be a good place to go. I don't think he'd cut it the way I want it cut. And I think there's a lot of people think, I don't think he'll cut it the way I want it cut. But why is it empty? Is it because I'm thinking that? No. It's empty because that's the way that man sees his barbershop. We had some people come into Chicago one time when I was working with the Nightingale organization. They had a chicken restaurant in Ohio. It was out in the country. It was a great, big, beautiful white mansion. They sold more chicken dinners than any restaurant in the United States. People would come from 3 states away to buy from them. It's in the image. Now ask yourself, what kind of an image have you been holding? Have you been wishing good things would happen but think bad things would happen? Do you see, most people will let their present physical results control their way of thinking. They're emotionally involved in it. They think it's an accident that the same results keep reoccurring. That's no accident. If you've got a financial problem, if you've got a cash flow problem, if you've got a marital problem, that's what most people concentrate on. If a doctor takes a photograph of your body and then tells you you're sick and shows you you're sick, what's the person concentrate on? Sickness. What's the photograph prove? The photograph proves that the person has been concentrating on something wrong to move their body into that vibration. What should they do? They should ask for help. Where does it come from? There's only one source, and they see perfect health. Or they see prosperity. But the cynics don't believe this. And it's a strange thing, the cynics don't get results either. Quit letting your present results control your thinking. This power that I call God is in every one of us. And it's no more present in one person than it is in the other. Scott the Turk hasn't got any more of this power than Bob's got. Bob hasn't got any more of it than Reen's got. Reen hasn't got any more of it than Dave's got. Every one of us are an expression of the same power. And when we really grasp this universal concept, we're going to realize that we are all essentially the same with the same powers. It's learning how to use this. I remembered how that went, Dan. It says, because the time will most assuredly come, and the best and wisest know not how soon, when death, the leveler of all human greatness, will reduce us all to the same level. It's like burning the paper, isn't it? It's like boiling the water. See, death, as we know it, is moving out of this thing. Life, as we know it, is in this thing. But if nothing's created or destroyed, and if all science and all theology tell us the same thing, then that only postulates one theory, the theory of life. See, everything you have is going to belong to someone else at the time of your death, but what you are is yours forever. Now, we want to try and understand this concept. On page 28, we say you are a perfect instrument for spirit to express itself through. Start to see yourself. Now, every time you think of yourself, think of that drawing. Every time you think of the drawing, you think of yourself. You've got to have an image to work with. On page 28, we say, see yourself as a perfectly endowed spiritual instrument without limitation. When you do, you're going to find it easy, in fact natural, to expect the good you desire. You will also understand that doubt simply obstructs the unfoldment of the prosperity in your life. Now, read this bottom paragraph on page 28. Doubt does not shut down the workings of the power. The power's always working. Think of the man in the refrigerator car. It's always working. It never stops. There isn't some emotional or capricious God saying, oh, wait a minute, you're choosing the wrong thought. You ask and you'll receive. You ask for the wrong thing, you're going to get it. It'll be delivered right on schedule. You can make buck on it. The doubt you hold becomes the picture, which will turn into your physical results. You see, when you build the picture, you control from inside. You do not control from outside, regardless of the circumstance of the present results. What did James Allen say? Your circumstances may be uncongenial, but they will not long remain so if you perceive the ideal and strive to reach it. Do you know what an ideal is? An ideal is an idea that you fall in love with. And you know what love is? Love is resonance. It's harmony. It's in tune. It's operating on the same frequency. Well, when you get the higher side of your personality operating with the lower side of your personality, you're going to see miraculous changes take place on the physical side of your personality. But until you get these two in tune, you're going to have a problem. Because when they're not in tune, there's what we call conflict. And if there's conflict in the mind, I guarantee it'll express itself in the body. What do you think dis-ease is? It's the opposite of at ease. On page 29, one of the best definitions of faith I've ever heard came from a chap in Chicago, Clarence Smithison. Clarence Smithison. He said, faith is the ability to see the invisible. What did we say about Scott's music? No one on planet Earth had ever heard that music that he heard in his head until he put it on paper and then sent it out so that the rest of the world could enjoy what he was enjoying. It's the ability to see the invisible, to believe in the incredible. What is incredible is that there's a power in every cell of your being that operates in a totally deductive manner. It will take whatever image you impress it upon it, and it'll move you into the vibration you have to be in, to act the way you have to act, to attract the thing you have to attract for the manifestation of the image that you chose to build. You can say, using a slightly different vocabulary, I'd make the observation, if you can show me a person who achieves great things, I can show you a person who has great faith in themselves and their ability to achieve what they imagine. On page 29. I was having dinner last night with Paul Hutsey. He told me a most interesting little story. Paul was talking about, it's what's on the inside, it's not what's on the outside. He talked about it yesterday while he was talking about it last night. And he tells the story about the little black boy that went to the carnival. And there was a man there blowing up balloons, filling them with helium gas, and then letting them go. And he filled a red balloon, and then he tied it up and he let it go. And the little boy was standing there watching him. And then he filled a yellow balloon with helium, and he tied it and he let it go. Then he filled a green balloon and he tied it and he let it go. And the little boy said, Mister, he said, can black balloons fly? He said, son, any balloon can fly. It's not what's on the outside that makes it fly, it's what's on the inside. And that's the way it works. Interesting idea. We say comparatively few people today realize just how much faith in oneself, your higher self, Not this false concept that we've been running around with, can't do this, can't do that. Your higher self, that side of you that's universal, that's the same side of us all. That part of you that's spiritually perfect has to do with your achievement. The majority of people never seem to conceive of faith as being a genuine creative force. Yet the truth is that not only is faith a bona fide power, it is the greatest one you will ever encounter. Ever encounter. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that whatever you accomplish in your lifetime will be in direct proportion to the intensity and persistence of your faith. Intensity, what do we mean by that? Well, remember we said one of the intellectual factors was the will. The will gives us the ability to concentrate on an idea. And when we concentrate on the idea, we're just taking that power and turning it right over. We're giving more energy to the idea. What did Emerson say? The only thing that can grow is the thing you give energy to. It's been told to us 10,000 ways. I think what we want to do is wake up. May I borrow your program, please? No, the tapes.